Right, hello everybody. This is Eric Togneri. Thank you all for joining today. Really appreciate it very much. This is one of my favorite topics, so I think it'll be informative and hopefully kind of interesting and fun. So before we get started, which will be in a couple of minutes, I want to give a few folks time to join if they had a meeting that ended at 1 o'clock. I'll give some housekeeping. I'd love to get your questions in the chat, and so I'll cover that in just a second, and then we'll get this thing rolling. Again, thank you for joining us. To button my jacket, it keeps jacking out. All right, again, Eric Togneri. We are right at the 1 o'clock hour here on the East Coast, whatever time that means, wherever you are. We have folks coming in at least from all over the country, and I believe we have a few global clients as well joining us. So that's always exciting. Again, I'll give it till 1:02 Eastern time, and then we'll get rolling. All right, I see some familiar names. Angie, I see you joined us. Thank you for that. Joe, I see you're here from Atlanta as well. Thank you. A lot of new faces. Tom Fulton, welcome. Okay, so we're going to get started with just a little bit of housekeeping, and then I'm going to roll right into this because we have a lot to cover. So, for those of you joining from Nary Capital, if you find any technical glitches going on, or I can't be heard well, or whatever that might be, if you wouldn't mind just texting me and letting me know. I do not have a producer with me today, so having to run the controls, and that is not my forte. So, housekeeping. As I cover material today, one of the things that I would ask is that you utilize the chat. If you utilize the chat as I roll through the presentation, you can capture no matter where it is. I will be able to capture no matter where I am that you had a question about that slide. I'm going to try to save 5 to 10 minutes at the very end for Q&A. Excuse me. Got a little bit of struggle with my voice today, but I think I'm going to be okay. I've got a nice beverage here. So that's the best way to do it with the chat. That way you can capture it. Don't know if you know this about Zoom, but you can actually save chat so you could see all the questions and comments that come in on the chat section. And if I see somebody's hand go up, I might have to keep rolling in the interest of time, but I will try to stop if that indeed happens. So I'm going to share my screen. E2. Yep, that's the one I want. All right, all right, all right. Bear with me. One moment. Out of the way. Having trouble going into presentation mode, so bear with me just for another second or two. There we go. All right. So you might have seen that the title changed a little bit from what's behind me on the exitontop.com website. So everybody is going to get a copy of this presentation. And why that's important is you might want to note the slide number if you want to take some extra notes, as if though you were writing on that page. So that's just a little helpful hint. And so we're toying with an idea of changing the title of this particular presentation that we deliver some version of several times a year. And I think this title is one that I've tested with a bunch of CEOs out there, and it seems like it is being well received. But I think it's the goal that we all have as business owners, which is how do we build a business that's so valuable that investors will compete to buy? Because that really is how you exit on top. And so we're going to spend a lot of time just setting up how we get to understanding valuation drivers. And I think that you're going to find the flow of the presentation to be very useful and compelling. Okay. So a little bit about me. For those of you that don't know me, I'm a value builder, investor, advisor. I co-founded Neri Capital Partners about 21 years ago now with my father. And hopefully he's on the call today. He's one of my biggest fans. I really appreciate that, Dad. And about 5, 6 years ago now, in that time frame, I knew that business valuation and value building was really the way to go to get to an exit one day. So Neri Capital Partners was founded to help people manage through acquisitions and exits. Exit on Top is really a little bit more about looking at how do we get started on this path, because it's a multi-year path. We've done 249 plus transactions, over 1,085 valuations, and it's all about determine, scale, and exit. Determine, scale, and exit. We determine value through business valuations. We scale value through the value drivers I'll share with you on the back half of this presentation, and through acquisitions. Also, one day, entrepreneurs that have built a valuable business can exit on top. You're going to see some QR codes throughout. Feel free to scan those. If for whatever reason you're not comfortable scanning, but you are comfortable with websites, all the resources, everything I talk about today can be accessed in one way, shape, or another through exitontop.com. And I also welcome you to connect with me on LinkedIn. So a little bit about my why and my family, just to personalize it a little bit. This is my oldest son, Joseph. He is unbelievable. And if you know me, I'm a little bit small. We call him Big Joe because he kind of is. That's Joshua in the bottom right. He's in Special Forces in the Navy. He's turned out to be quite a BA. And in the top right is my wife, Teresa. She likes hats, as you can tell. And there's Joe's dog, Duke, and my dog Jake, that recently passed away, and so we miss him. And then I just like to throw a picture of me when I was 30 something years younger, just to let people know I used to have hair. All right, so I'm going to kick this off with just a little story. It's really a case study. So I had a client that came to me looking for a business valuation and was really excited about exiting her business and moving to a property that she had bought several decades earlier in Hilton Head, South Carolina. And she was just fired up. Let's get a valuation. Let's get rolling. I want to get out of here. Well, she was a power agent in Atlanta. She was selling about $2 million a year in real estate. And by that, I mean not the value of the real estate, the value of the commissions from the real estate. So she was doing quite well. And she had a small company, about five or six other agents, I think were there, and some part-time, some full-time, but she was the company. And what she was producing was the value of the company. Okay. So when we got the valuation work done, it turned out she was really disappointed because she couldn't believe that she was basically making, because she was a very low overhead operation, you know, close to $2 million a year she was making. Okay. And her business was worth about exactly that. So it's this dilemma that companies that are built in owner-centric companies, not team-led companies, where if the owner plans on exiting the company and leaving it, then the value leaves with that owner if it's not created in the right way. Well, there's a happy ending to this story, and it sets up really the rest of the presentation very nicely, because I saw a very small line item on our profit and loss statements. And if you're familiar with QuickBooks, these are the below the net operating income. It's before the net income. There's typically a kind of miscellaneous revenue and income section. And there was $20,000 sitting there in income. And so I asked the question as part of the valuation, well, what is that? And it turned out that it was basically commissions being paid to a property management company. Well, I knew that property management companies are basically high recurring revenue operations, because typically somebody signs a year or 2-year contract, maybe even longer in some instances, with a property management company. And so my immediate thing was, well, if you're not ready, to retire on what your company is worth today, why don't you start a property management company or buy a property management company? And so she started, well, a light bulb went off for her. And later I'll tell you how it went off for me, that she could do this. She could build a recurring revenue based company. That was very valuable, because she knew a GC, a general contractor, that could manage the maintenance side of that business. And she knew that she could do the administrative stuff with her team of contracts and the paper management that goes along with property management. So she knew she could do it. And here's what happened. She decided to go all in on property management and still do the real estate, because the real estate fed the property management, because half the real estate that she was selling, so about $1 million of that $2 million, was being sold to investors. And then the investors needed a property management company, and that's how she was getting those referral fees. And so she decided, I can do that myself. And the results were phenomenal. Within 2 years, her company was worth 7 times more than her real estate company. Can you imagine that? And then the company that bought her was a property management company out of Las Vegas that had operations in several cities, but Honolulu and Panama City Beach, and was looking for a property management company in Atlanta. And they said, we just want the property management company. You can keep the real estate. So she had the value of the real estate company still in her portfolio, and she got paid a whole lot more for the property management company. And the moral of this story is predictable revenues and profits. Okay? So predictability means less risk for a buyer or investor, which means your company becomes much more valuable. And that's how it worked out for her. And I have that same story for my company. I won't belabor it, but I looked at her company and my light bulb went off and said, my company looks a lot like hers. Okay. And so we're building in business valuation and value building, what we're talking about today, into our business model. And you can do the same with your companies. If you can do it with transaction based companies, not subscription model companies, you could figure out a way to use a feeder system that, yeah, makes some money, but it's part of a bigger picture that makes your company more valuable. Okay. So this is when I first figured out it's not the money you make. It's not $2 million. It's the value you create. It's what you build. It's what you put together that some investor or buyer is going to want to buy. And that is my quote, by the way. I don't know if anybody else has said that because I've never heard anyone else say it, but you're welcome to use it. But I'll give you some other famous quotes. I just heard this one on TV the other day, and I'm like, I've been using that in presentations for years. Ben Franklin famously said, an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. And straight to business valuation, a little bit more up to date than Ben Franklin is Warren Buffett, who said business valuation is the heart of risk management. And without it, you are blind. And the quote's not here on the slide, but he was famously quoted as saying, if there was only one class in business school, then that should be business valuation. Okay? And so with all that said, talked about business valuation just a little bit so far. We'll talk a little bit more about it. Only 2% of small business owners know their business valuation. And why this is so remarkable is almost 90%, according to the SBA, of a business owner's overall net worth is tied up in the value of their business. It is their retirement. It is where their money sits. They might have some houses and cash or whatever they have, cars, of course, but their business represents their net worth. Yet, back up, only 2% of them know. Okay. So that alone just lets you know that if you really believe that knowledge is power and you believe that business valuation is the heart of risk management, but you don't know the value of your business, you need to figure it out because you got to know where you are. Business valuation is a point in time. It's like your balance sheet that way. You must know where you are to get where you're going. And if your destination is exit on top, valuation is the first step. Okay? So when's the right time to know? So often I get, well, a business owner tells me, well, I didn't need to get a business valuation. I'm like, how could you say that? If you don't know where your business is valued, and more importantly, why it's valued that way, and even more importantly than that, what you can do about it, then how are you building a valuable company? It would be as though a CEO of a company, a major corporation said, I don't ever look at my stock price. I don't need to know what my company's being valued at. But as private business owners, we do this all the time. All the time. Over 90%. And then you get excuses often that are off the mark. And this is the rest of my case. Off the mark because they say, I didn't need a business valuation. But they were thinking that they need a business valuation when they want to add a partner or subtract a partner from the business, or maybe they're going through a divorce, but some trigger caused them to have to get a business valuation. Not the real reason that you should always have a valuation on your company at least once a year. The real reason to get a valuation isn't the valuation itself. It's what the valuation allows you to do with your business. So, when's the right time? Yesterday's gone, so today's the right time. if you want to know how to grow your business, how to structure your business properly, and oh yeah, when it's time to sell. But guess what? Everybody knows, every business owner knows that you don't start saving. Now, whether they do it or not is a different story, but you don't start saving for retirement when you're ready to retire. Yet way too many business owners wait until they're ready to exit before they start thinking about their exit strategy. Okay? So these are important concepts. So it's a little of an eye chart, so I'm going to crack out my green. No, by the way, that's my colors, by the way. Yeah, that's a white logo down there, but my colors are green and black for my brand. And so I like to fly the colors. I'm that way. So you want to get a big picture on your company. Okay, that includes things like worth and protection, like another word for insurance, how you're going to plan for your future, how you're going to make better decisions, and how you're going to know your potential. Critically important. And great valuations, and I already alluded to this, but great valuations are actionable. And what do I mean by that? You should be able to not only know what your valuation is, what your number is, why is that number? Okay, this is repetitive, and it's repetitive on purpose. Know what the number is, know why is that number, and know what you can do about it. And a great valuation will be able to tell you whether you're underperforming, on par with, or overperforming your competitive set. Okay? And so think about this. How would you like to be in the top 2% of business owners? Business valuation can put you ahead. It can put you ahead of your competition. Okay? And it can set you up for success. So, and you guys are going to be repeating this after me one of these times, so you can exit on top. That's the name of the game. Okay? There's a bunch of different methodologies. I'm just going to go through a couple of them. This is too much of an eye chart, but again, remember, you're going to get all of these slides. Everybody that registered is going to get a slide deck. And so you're going to be able to see all of this stuff. But there's two valuation methodologies you should know about. Almost all small businesses are sold through what they call an asset sale value. That's the way an outside party looks at your business. Whether that's a bank or an employee that's buying your business, or even if you want to pass it down generationally, an outsider looks at your business as asset sale value. That's what they're willing to pay for your business. And so that's tangible assets like inventory or things like FF&E. If you're not familiar with that, that's furniture, fixtures, and equipment, but any hard assets. And then also the value of intangibles, which is critically important with small business because so much of small business's value is based upon what we call goodwill, which is another way of saying profitability in the company. Okay. Then there's an equity value of a business. Equity value is the value you place on your business as the owner. This is what's important to you. This is when you start to get to answer the question, if I sell this, what am I actually going to walk away with? Okay? So, equity value has all kinds of things in it, like assets on your balance sheet, like any cash you may be parking in your business, or any kind of accounts receivables, the money that your customers or clients owe you. So things like that, but also all the liabilities on your business, whether that be debt on credit cards or long-term loans on from a bank on who knows what, whatever you bought with the loan from a bank. So again, remember these things. Good valuation is going to tell you what other people think about the value of your business. But a good valuation also tells you what you think about the value of your business. Okay? Very important concepts. So what does drive the value of a business? So we license software from something called the Value Builder system. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about it because there's a bunch of free resources that we offer from this. And I'm going to spend another 15 or 20 minutes here going through the Value Builder system, not in its totality, but introducing you to it. So the Value Builder system produces a Value Builder score. And why does that Value Builder score matter? Okay. Why is it important? It's important because the average Value Builder score is 3.5. Excuse me. Average Value Builder score might be something like 60, but that's worth 3.5 times your earnings, meaning your profitability of your business. Folks with a Value Builder score of 90 plus are double that. This gets to intention. You're going to see what I mean when I go through some of the Value Builder drivers. How can you double the value of your business just by paying attention to the value drivers and where you have deficiencies and where you are okay and where you are great? And you obviously want to enforce the great and bring the okay to great and fix the problems that you have with your Value Builder score that are dragging you down. Okay. So what are some of the things you need to know about? So benefits of value with intention. When you go through a Value Builder score process, the whole goal is to view your company through the eyes of a potential buyer. And there's 8 value drivers that the Value Builder system talks about. Okay? You can hone in on the areas that can negatively impact the value of your business so you can get a premium offer for your business whenever that day comes, which might be a couple of years or it might be a couple of decades from now. But growing value with intent every day in your business. It'll help you make improvements in your company. Okay? Those improvements lead to a premium offer. Okay? And the advisement of the right improvements for your business so you know where to focus. So financial performance is number one. And guys, I'll tell you this, the most common problem that I see with small businesses is their books tend to be either a little messy or a lot messy. Okay? It's not focused on nearly as much as it should be. So job number one is just get your books cleaned up and get those right so that you can start addressing financial performance. Because what financial performance primarily is, what is the buyer really buying? It's a future stream of profitability. Okay. So this is, think about it like this. If you went to buy somebody's company, do you want to buy their problems? You don't. Do you want to buy, their headaches? You don't. Yes, you want their customers and their employees and all of that, but only because their customers are willing to pay enough and the employees can deliver on the promise of a future stream of profits. So if I was going to say, start with somewhere with your business, start with getting your books pristine, because you'll manage your business so much better, right? You'll have visibility to all kinds of things, but you'll also start to understand the future stream of profits. And we're going to get into how you make those profits more valuable than less valuable, because all profits and revenues are not created equal. And that's only because of risk. So buyers often tell me that I want to pay for a business based on what it's done lately. So I want an average of the last 3 years. I'll hear things like that. But you know what buyers really buy? They buy the potential of a business. Think about that. If somebody came and looked at your business, yeah, they can pay you. And this is all about getting premium offers, making your company more valuable. Yes, you'll get the value for what it is today, but the premium offers come in when a buyer, an investor can look at your business and they can see the potential growth of the business and they know they can make it even better. And so this is why, growth is a long time in the word, but scaling seems to be the latest vernacular in this decade. And why does everybody talk about scaling? One time my dad was working for a big corporation running a division of it, which is a company built by acquisition. That's one of the reasons why we got into the business that we're in together. Okay. He always said bigger isn't better, better is better. And so this is an extreme example, but think about this. What's better? A company that's selling lots of things to one customer? Okay. Extreme example, but think about businesses that actually scale. What they do is they do something extremely well and they build a machine around it where they can sell one thing to lots of customers. So ditch the lots of things to one customer and one thing and lots of customers and just think that the truth definitely lies somewhere in between. But on this continuum, you want to be able to efficiently grow, scale the business and scale it through coming up with something that is so great and being able to sell it to lots of people. Okay? Excuse me. You got to drink a lot of water. Next to the concept we call the Switzerland structure. So the Switzerland structure, Switzerland, in case you guys weren't aware of this, and I bet most are, Switzerland is known for their fierceness in protecting neutrality. Okay, that's why world summits are held there all the time. It's considered to be a place that is neutral. Well, in a business, what does that mean? So call it neutrality, call it whatever you want. But you've got your business, and then you have suppliers. So they're vendors of your business. Maybe it's where you get your inventory, or where you get some outsourced services. Neutrality dictates that you're not too reliant on any one supplier, that they can't be replaced. Now think about that same thing. That goes with customers as well. You don't want to be too reliant on a select number of customers. We call that customer concentration. You don't want one of your customers to represent 30% of your business, and because they have trouble or they fall out of love with your company or whatever, and they pull their business, and the next thing you know, your company just dropped 30%. So you don't want to be too reliant. Okay? And that goes for employees. You don't want to be over-reliant on any individual employee. So if you've got one sales guy, and if that sales guy is a superstar, and you don't have any backfill for that person, and no plan B, and they go away and your revenue drops precipitously, okay, you don't want to be over-reliant. So you're seeing the goal of neutrality. You don't want to be too over-reliant. Okay? It goes for owners as well, by the way. How many companies, here's the vernacular right now. How many companies are owner-centric? If the owner went on vacation, the company grinds to a halt versus an empowered, team-led company. Everybody knows it's true. Everybody knows it's true. Okay. So the fourth driver that we want to talk about today Ultimately, your freedom, is derived from your business. And freedom is really a prediction of cash flow. So think about it this way with the teeter-totter. The value of your business moves in the opposite direction from your cash flow needs. So the value of your business, the more cash your business needs, the less it's worth. The more cash your business generates, the more it's worth. Okay? All kinds of reasons for that. It's common sense, but folks don't think about it. They engage upon all kinds of activities like growth plans that are not directly related to increases in revenue, but put them in a lot of debt, for instance. That's usually like the worst case scenario that you see. But think about the working capital. My dad always says, cash is king. And he didn't come up with that, but it's such a true statement. Okay? All right. Recurring revenue. Remember how I started off the presentation today where I talked about the real estate company that added a property management element to the company, and then all of a sudden it had recurring revenue and it became considerably more valuable. Now I want you to put yourself in the buyer's shoes again. This is where you need to have your mindset. Okay. Recurring revenue. All recurring revenue really is, at the end of the day, is taking risk out of the revenue and the profit that your business generates. The more as a percentage of your overall revenue that you have, that's recurring. You can count on it month in and month out. It's not project-based revenue. The less risky that revenue stream is. This is another very common one. I hear people talk about it all the time, but it's very, very important. We can figure out exactly where your company's scoring next to your competitive set. Okay? So let's talk about an example. I gave you a real life one, but think about this. Say we have a security company. And what do security companies do? They install cameras and equipment, in a residence or in a commercial property. Okay. And they have maintenance contracts. All right. They call it monitoring in their business, but they're maintenance contracts, billing clients monthly, oftentimes to a credit card or an ACH transaction from a bank, where it happens so seamlessly, it just goes on in perpetuity. So what do you think on average a business with $1 million in revenue is? Think about the value of that versus a monitoring business that had $1 million in revenue. Same industry. One's just installing cameras and, product essentially. And then one is monitoring the reason that why it was installed in the first place. Okay. This is how much a difference it is. The business that is project based is worth $750,000 in this scenario, and well over twice that for a business that's focused on monitoring. Now, the truth is, I don't know too many companies in that sector that haven't had a little bit of both, but some are much better at others at the monitoring service. And the ones that are much better than the others are the ones that are winning the security business game. They're the ones getting the ridiculous multiples when they exit. Important concepts. Okay, so one of my favorites, monopoly control. Monopoly control. We use monopolies as a bad thing, but I'm going to show you that monopoly control, at least as we talk about it as a driver of value, is a super thing. Okay, so this will probably make sense though. So what are the benefits of differentiation? What are the if you have monopoly control, you do something really unique. Nobody else can compete with you at it, and you're in a league of your own. Okay? So what's the benefits of differentiation? We call it a virtuous cycle. But here's what I mean by a virtuous cycle. So let's start at the top right, blue quadrant. Okay? If you have differentiation, if you have uniqueness, then you can control pricing because nobody else is pricing against you. So you're not changing pricings for competitive reasons. You'd only be changing them because customers quit buying from you. But if you offer something unique that customers want, then you can control pricing, which allows you to have higher margins, which allows you to have more disposable income to market more. And here's the virtual cycle, right? And it starts all over again. I know you've heard the riches are in the niches. This is what they're talking about. Monopoly control. Is everybody thinking about these drivers of value with your business? Okay, so time doesn't allow me to cover all 8 today, but I'm going to give you something here. Just stick to the end, and it's a free value builder score and a bunch of other resources that are going to help you to do this. And you can DIY it. You can have us help you. Whatever you might need, but I wanted to give you some free resources for showing up and giving us the time today. But let's just talk about some real life case studies because they're always fun. They're always fun. So let me tell you about a concrete contractor. I'm based here in South Atlanta in Georgia. Okay. And I had the opportunity to do a valuation for a concrete contractor. And what I mean by concrete contractor, he was doing almost exclusively residential, a little bit of commercial, but he was doing sidewalks and driveways and patios and walkways, things like that. Okay. That's what his company did. And he had a lot of things going for him. So here's the backstory. He started the business when he's 20 years old, and it was just a truck and some tools. And it's funny to hear him tell the story because he was in college, again, really smart guy, but he was hating it. He didn't like it at all. He was a finance guy, finance major, and he just like, I can't imagine doing this for the rest of my life. All right. So he happened to do a slab for a guy at church in his backyard. And he's like, now I kind of like doing this. Believe it or not, some people do. We had a lot of demand on this business. 25 years later, he had grown to have 21 employees, 3.5 million in revenue, and just under 700,000 in adjusted earnings, which is another way of saying profitability. So he's doing well. And he had a dominant market share. He was only serving 2 counties, but he had a 90% market share in the 2 counties that he served. Okay? But he was burnt out. He had been the man for years and years and years. He'd be the first to admit that the only thing holding the value of his business down, because he had monopoly control and he was priced right and his books were pristine and his marketing was great. He was differentiated. He was seen as the best in the market and nobody could compete with him in the market, even though many tried. Lots of those value drivers he was doing really well, but he was burnt out because it was still an owner-centric company. He was not out there pouring the concrete, but he was making all the important decisions in the company. But he did have team leaders that were actually running the projects. And he did have some salespeople helping him sell the projects. And so it wasn't overly customer centric for a business of this size, but it was a heavy enough weight that, he was ready to go. Okay. He wants to spend more time with his family. So you'll see this when you get the deck. too small of things. So remember those two valuation methodologies I said earlier? The equity value and the asset sale value? Okay. So the equity value on his business was $2 million. And his asset sale value was just a little bit less than that. And that's because he did not have a lot of debt. His equity and asset value mirrored each other much more. Usually there's some differentiation there, either on the high or the low side, depending on how the company's being run. But this was what it was. So because he had all of these value drivers going right for him, okay, the valuation itself wasn't picking up on what a premium buyer would buy. That's the whole point. A premium buyer is not buying at the valuation. They're paying higher than market value. And they'll compete with other buyers to take on those companies because the companies are so attractive. So what do you guys think this company sold for? And you can see the case study on my website as well. Brian Sell Like a Boss Concrete. He sold for just under $3 million. Okay? What a difference building a valuable company can make so you can exit on top. And so he could have just technically, because of his lifestyle, he could have gone on and just retired because he had a whole bunch of investment properties where he was making money outside of the business. I think he owned 20 properties or so. I think in the 2 years after Brian sold the company, he bought a whole bunch more, like another 20, 30 properties. And then he called me up 2 years later and said, Eric, I'm ready to buy another company. He was no longer burnout. And he was still a relatively young man in good health. What a difference doing things right and building a valuable company can make to exiting on top. And he'll do it over and over again now. Okay? Tell you about an investment advisor. So this is a financial manager, and this company had been around for a long, long time. Her dad started the business when he was 34. And when he was 69, his daughter, who worked in the business, he sold it to her. And she ran it for another 25 years. But she was getting ready to retire, take chips off the table. She was willing to work longer, but didn't have any heirs to pass it to. She was the end of the line in the company from a family perspective. 9 employees, $3 million in revenue. I'm rounding, guys. $1 million in adjusted earnings, profitability. Very loyal client base. Many of her clients were her dad's clients, and they were still with it. Their families were, at least. Okay. So she loved her job. She was just like, gosh, been doing well for a long time. I've got other priorities right now, so I'm going to put it on the market. Again, I won't belabor the eye charts with you. So the equity value with her business, and this turned out to be the same way as Brian's business, with the equity value and the asset sale value being about the same, but both coming in just under $5 million. Okay. Loyalty and retention, no customer concentration to speak with, an owner that was willing to stick around and help with a transition. And she was not the producer anymore in the company. Left that out of the backstory. But the company wasn't relying on her. Okay? She had tons of the good stuff going on with her company. So let's see what she sold for. 5.4. 5.4 million. Above valuation. Because she had a valuable company. Okay. Boy, if these stories aren't hitting home with you guys, you business owners, think about that. And even if you're looking to acquire a company, and think about what kind of company do you want to buy? All right. So to get the other drivers of value, and get it for free, by the way, get your value builder score. It's not a long, arduous process. It's like 20 or 30 minutes. It's a solid questionnaire. It's an assessment tool. And if you're honest with it, it'll tell you invaluable things about where your business is today. Okay. But we'll also get you what you could do about it to make it more valuable. Okay. So get your value builder score, get a valuation, and start on your path to improving the value of your company. All right. So this goes back to a prior slide, but I think it makes sense to go ahead and just put it into real terms. Value builder score of 60 versus 90, pre-tax profit being exactly the same. The multiple difference is 3.5 versus 7.1. So are you building a $2.8 million company, which is an average company? Are you building a $5.7 million above average company? Okay. The ROI is incredible, but the value builder score is free. The assessment is free. So this is what, I said I would hone in on, which was, let's talk just a little bit about the free tools that we have to offer. I'll just put them all up here right now. So number one, I think you need to go all in on building value. The only regret I have with my company is that I didn't go harder 21 years ago when we started it than I do today. Because time is fleeting and I missed out on years of really focusing on it. Please don't do that to your business. Get your value builder score and figure out where you are. We also have a section, and it looks like those are a little bit hard to read, but these are all on exitontop.com. Those QR codes will get you there. Okay, you'll get those if you don't want to go fishing around the website, but they're pretty easy to find. It's a clean site. Get a sector report. You'll find that invaluable. If you buy them off the rack, they're like $1,000 plus a piece. It's IBIS World Reports, and it has invaluable sector information, and we're happy to provide that to you for free. Go to exitontop.com, and we have a business valuation calculator. It's not perfect, but it'll get you in the ballpark to at least say, hey, maybe I need a real business valuation so that I'm getting this right. Because business valuation, believe it or not, guys, is a pretty complicated process. And there's no way to do it with a simplistic calculator. But at least get you thinking about the right thing. So get your value estimate, another free resource. And then get your free strategy call with either me personally or with one of my team. Okay? And you can get that right at exitontop.com as well. All right. So that is really where I'm going to close today. I'm going to say this real quick, and then I'm going to go back to the slide before so you guys can hit those codes, get those free resources, and do some Q&A. All right. But this is where I started. I'm going to end it here from the perspective of the last slide. All right. Determine, scale, exit. Okay. We determine value through business valuation. We scale value through value resources like the value builder score and through acquisitions. All right. Also, you can exit on top one day. And here's the beautiful thing about exiting on top. It means something different to everybody. To somebody, it might mean golf. To somebody else, it might be going up to Massachusetts and bouncing a grandchild on your leg. Okay? It might be a lake house, or it might be a house at the ocean. It might just be having the freedom to do whatever you want when you wake up in the morning. You know your exit on top. Build a business that will allow you to fulfill that dream. Pretty exciting stuff, guys. So back to the free resources, and let's see if we had some questions come in. All right, 1 second here. Q&A. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know why that is. We run the same webinar. The question is, chat is not, it was not a question, it's a statement. Chat is not enabled. So I apologize for that, guys. You know how to communicate with me directly. We're going to send you this presentation, so never fear. We'll get your questions answered. And so that, I think that's important. Do we give certificates? Is a question. And no, we don't give certificates directly. Value Builder System will give you if you wanted to coach value building, the value building system can get you all set up, and I can give you those contacts. Plus, value building, the valuation side of things, you can get all kinds of certified valuations. Our software vendor certifies people in business valuation, but there are many other places out there that give certificates in business valuation. Okay. And you can even get certifications in transaction work. So if you're one that likes to learn and get a certificate proving that you learned something, there are all kinds of things that you can do. And they're like, for people that want to get into exit planning, there's something called, the Exit Planning Institute. They offer a credential called CEPA. That's CEPA. Okay. The CEPA designation, it's not that expensive for what you get at all. And I like it just for the knowledge of how I could talk with my clients. I don't really participate in official exit planning consulting, but it gave me an invaluable perspective. Okay. I'm still in the planning phase to start my business. I'm here because I already thinking about the potential end goal. I want to build everything from the ground up. Great information today. Thank you. Thank you for that. That's very high praise. You are the rare commodity, Natalia, I believe is how you pronounce that. A very rare individual that sees that even before you start your business, you do want to have an end game in mind. And I would start with, if you put together a really good business plan, hey, you're just getting into something, it's a startup. It's going to be much more accurate once you have a few years under your belt. But if you start off thinking, okay, if I meet these numbers that I've projected, and these financials that I projected in my business plan, how valuable will this thing be that I'm creating? And then all of a sudden, leaving a corporate job or, taking a pay cut from 300 grand to 100 grand during those startup years, it doesn't freak you out nearly as much. So I really commend you for that. That's really awesome. Okay. What do we got? 3 minutes left. Okay. I don't know what the R stands for, but R. Bartram, thank you very much for that comment. He basically said, you gave me a lot to think about today and very helpful. And I guess with that, it's a Friday afternoon, at least where I am today. I'm going to just wrap up, with a final thought. I kind of already did that with the slide of the person on the mountain with their hands up in the air and all of that. But the decision on whether you want your business to be a job and you just show up and do the work, if you're a good worker and you're fair and honest, you'll probably have enough success to make a decent living. Probably. There are exceptions to that because of all kinds of environmental factors, but you probably will be okay if you think about your company as a job and you do it extremely well. But the potential of your company gets realized through thinking about your company as an asset that is valuable, but could be much, much, much more valuable. And that's where it starts to get exciting. Don't be the CEO of your own company where you never look at your stock price. Constantly be looking at the value that you're creating in your company. You will never regret it. The earlier you start, I don't know of a single soul that I've ever talked to that took exit planning seriously as a long-term thing that was not thrilled with their decision to do so. I know folks with mountains of regret that treated their companies like a job. And it's not that they have regret that they didn't have fun or like being an entrepreneur, but financially they were in a much worse position than they could have been. And oh, by the way, guys, almost every one of these factors that I talked about, your quality of life goes up. Okay? Wouldn't it be nice to show up to your company and contribute as much or as little as you want because you have a team-led company? You get your life back. You're not working 80 hours a week unless you want to. You're not because you have to. So I thank you all on a Friday afternoon for joining me. I appreciate it. Please take advantage of the free resources because that's how we continue the conversation and that's how you're going to really get value out of today's meeting.